If you're already here with us, welcome. This is Lauren Bailey with Girls Club and my very esteemed panel, looking like the Brady Bunch on your screen right now. And you have joined us for What Women Want at Work. And I'm so excited about this panel and everything we're bringing to the webinar today. Ladies and gentlemen, get your pads of paper and your pencils and your notes and your slacks or whatever else you kids do these days to take notes, because it is chock full of really actionable, fantastic ideas. I'm pumped about all the value we're going to add today. So we'll be getting started officially in about 2 minutes. And yes, this is recording. So if you're multitasking, not that salespeople do that, or you've got to run early, you bet you're going to get a copy of the recording afterwards. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. Again, welcome if you're just joining us. We're going to dig in about 1 minute. On this platform, everybody is on mute, but your feedback and your questions are really important to us. So if you can go in and type your question, we've got time at the end for the panel to address those questions. And listen, I know that I have some. I was posting that on LinkedIn that, gosh, I always say guys. Like, is that a problem? Am I running a bro culture as a woman sales leader? So if you've got questions, this is a safe space, and I hope that you'll ask them. Type them into questions, and we've got time at the end. I'm also going to share that we have one more amazing panelist than camera available. So you're going to see us rotate a little bit through this. So this is LB, and I'm going to stay off camera. So lucky me, no hair and makeup today. But we also have, not pictured right now, Margaret Weniger, our Executive Director of Girls Club. And you'll see us kind of change throughout. So the Brady Bunch will move throughout the presentation. Oh, we're going to start it right now and give it a try. So thank you. We're going to try to keep it fun and interesting and keep you on your toes. Everybody, are you ready? Shall we kick this baby off?
Yeah.
Ready. No, but let's do like a max get ready. Let's do a max level we're ready.
Woo, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Max was our cheerleader, you guys, before we started the broadcast. This is fantastic. All right, so welcome to What Women Want at Work. Actionable steps that you can take today, tomorrow, and through the rest of the year and next year to make a really big difference in recruiting more women and retaining more women in your organization. So this webinar is brought to you by a community called Girls Club. Girls Club is an exclusive community of top performing salespeople from BDRs all the way up to SVPs. And we're all dedicated to changing the face of sales by helping more women earn positions in management and leadership. At our core is a 9-month training program for aspiring managers. We teach critical inside sales management skills and provide personal sales leadership mentor from another company, confidence building programs, and access to a network of incredible women role models at the top of their sales profession. Sneak peek into some of them today. So one of our core values at Girls Club is action. We're not a group who likes to just talk about it. We like to take action on it. And we actually celebrate that we're not always getting it perfect. In fact, this webinar is just like our Girls Club program. It's kind of my response to the chatter. For years, people have been talking about a lack of women in sales leadership, and I just got done talking about it. Girls Club might not be the perfect fix, and this webinar might not solve the whole problem of bro culture, but it's not going to stop us from going for it. So let me tell you what to expect. What Women Want at Work is in response to the constant news and social media chatter of the bro culture and harassment. And we're not here to bash, we're here to learn. And I really applaud our sponsors, our panel, and you, our attendees today, for being willing to learn out loud. And what I mean by that is that you know you've made progress and you're willing to share it, even though you may not be sure you're doing it perfectly. Because let's be honest, panel, that's risky, right? We're highlighting you here as experts, and it's a risk for you to say, I know what I'm doing it well. And you might not be doing it perfectly. We may say something that rubs somebody else the wrong way, but we're here together with pure intent, and we have the courage to learn out loud, and we invite you to do the same with us. The rule is nobody's here to bash. If you bring an issue, please also bring your recommended solution or bring it in the form of a question. We'll do our job of providing actionable tips in the next 45 minutes, and I ask you also to push a boundary and share those tips. We have many more women on this call than men. So ladies, if you get something actionable you wish was happening in your company, share it with your manager, with your network, with your brother, with your leader. Education is how we move past this. So I really encourage the women on today's call to stop voting with your exit. Be brave enough instead to educate. So this webinar and our entire community wouldn't be possible without the support of these amazing sponsors you see on the screen. They took a risk to support my vision of more women in sales leadership, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart. Now let's meet this badass panel. Here we go. So in the sake of time, everybody, I'm going to do the intros. As I was sharing with the panel, when I get asked to introduce myself, I, tend to sort of come to consciousness 5 minutes later. Panelists, I'm going to ask you to go on mute for a second because somebody has an emergency in the background. All right. Lori Richardson is up first. Who doesn't know Lori? She's the president of Women Sales Pros. She's working on research and launching programs with companies to support more women in sales and sales leadership in organizations with a male majority B2B sales teams. I've loved the work you've done over the last few years. Rebecca Brewer, founder of Utah Women in Sales and regional sales manager at Lucid Software. So she's here representing women right in the thick of it. She's had an emergency root canal this morning, and look, she still looks fantastic. So she's gonna go on and off camera with everybody else today. Amira Rand is the VP of Sales and Strategic Partnerships for Criteria Corp. Criteria Corp provides pre-employment assessment testing. She's been in sales for 20 plus years and in sales leadership for over 15 years. She's a proud mentor and really active community member in our Girls Club. Margaret Weniger, hello. She's our executive director of Girls Club. She brings a decade of experience leading sales teams to scale in the software industry. She actually created the first leadership training program at SalesLoft. And I can't tell you how lucky I am that she gave up sales leadership to come and run Girls Club for me. All right, let's meet Cynthia. Cynthia Barnes, give us a wave. She's been recognized as one of the most influential women in sales. She's a former top 1% saleswoman herself. And in 2016, she founded the National Association of Women Sales Professionals, the nation's only organization dedicated to helping women sales pros reach the top 1% and dance on the glass ceiling. I love that. Max Altschuler, who doesn't know Max? Max holds down 2 jobs and is still dedicating his time to important causes like this one. He's the VP of Marketing at Outreach.io, the leading sales engagement platform, and the CEO of Sales Hacker. We all know Sales Hacker, the #1 community for modern B2B sales pros. We love Max for his support of Girls Club and his dedication to ensuring a 50-50 male to female split for speakers at his wildly popular annual conference called Unleash. Max, you may actually be the first person to pull this off.
We've been trying for a long time. We've got pretty close on a lot of our events so far.
You've done an amazing job. I was just talking with a woman this week who was like, I'm so sick of attending manels. Is that not hilarious? The all-male panel. A manel? New term. All right, last but certainly not least, in his ugly sweater today. Nailed it. Udi Lettergore, 5-time VP of Marketing. He's currently heading up marketing at Gong.io, hot Silicon Valley startup disrupting the sales industry, and my personal favorite research tool for sales call analytics. I love the research that Gong puts out, mostly because they talk about how women outperform men. Udi leads several of the company's initiatives to promote inclusion and diversity, and has been volunteering for many years for the LGBT community organizations, including chairing the Israeli Association of Gay Fathers. We're really proud to have Udi and Gong involved in Girls Club. Welcome, everybody.
Glad to be here.
All right, so here's what we're going to talk about, you guys. We'll start with a little State of the Union, and then we're going to go through all these different steps and actionable tips in each one where we attract more women to the workplace, the hiring process, engaging and retaining women at work, and what women want and need to rise up, so promoting women. And we're going to end with some fast tips for managers and leaders, and then your questions. So we're going to dig into the State of the Union, and I'm going to first ask Margaret, our Executive Director of Girls Club, to give kind of a, what is this modern definition of the bro culture? And I know that's a tough thing, right? So no pressure, Marg, but people talk about bro culture, and not everybody knows what the heck it means.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one I think it's tricky because the old bro culture was really easy to identify, right? It's like you think about the CE Bro, and it's a company that feels more like a frat house than an organization. And what's been really great is that there's been a lot of talk around that being an issue, and a lot of those companies fizzled out because they weren't sustainable. And what's tricky now is that because so much talk has been done around bro culture, you're seeing it morph a little bit where it's not so obvious. It's not kind of the stereotype that you envision when you think about a typical bro, and it's more becoming this undercurrent of the feeling of alienation and exclusion. And oftentimes the people creating that space aren't aware that they're doing it, and the people who are feeling the implications of it don't feel they have a voice or aren't comfortable enough to speak up and say something about it. So it's evolving. We're making progress, but it's somewhat evolved into almost more of an undercurrent thing that's happening where there's this dilemma of people unintentionally creating the environment and then those feeling it not expressing or conveying that they are, feeling like the odd back out.
Which is exactly what we're solving for here today, right? So,
Yep.
Lori, I don't know anyone who's done more research and put more effort into this cause. You inspired me to start Girls Club. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about what are the challenges out there, where were we, and what's the future look like?
Sure. And first, I just want to say many of my favorite people are on this panel. I'm so honored to be on this. And Margaret, you're beaming. I don't know why, but Margaret, you seem so thrilled and so excited. I know you would be too, Lauren, if we could see you.
There's a lot of passion here. Yep.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I'm so excited about all the efforts that you're doing. So we've been talking to a lot of women and men in the last couple of years, and what is true, and I totally go with what Margaret's talking about. There's an undercurrent, sales has a bad rap in the first place. So sales is a turnoff to a lot of people, not just women. And then when you couple it with the fact that many companies many industries have a male majority sales force, and so not everyone feels as comfortable or welcome or interested. There are a lot of different reasons. And the unconscious bias, the things that have just been done in sales for years that we don't think about, are part of it. And then there's, I'm not crazy about the word microaggression because it sounds, really aggressive. But what I've learned in talking to so many people is that it's the little things. It's the little things that will make a woman who's the only woman or one of a couple women on a sales team frustrated. And it's not big, blatant things. It's just a lot of little nitpicky little things that build up. And then, someone gets upset over a very small thing, but it's because there were all these other little things that went on and on. And I think finally the lack of role models of strong women in sales and strong women sales leaders, which, turns me to the next step, which is the bright future. There's a very bright future. This is an awesome time to be a woman in sales and to be a male ally supporting this effort, because people are listening and people are making changes. And we talk to CEOs every week and HR executives all the time that say, help us get more women in our sales team. And that's very exciting. There are amazing men that are in the conversation, which is so important. Two of them are on the screen right now. And there are great discussions that are going on with men and women, and that's what it takes. It's not a women's issue. This is a business issue. And by getting men into the conversation all the time is very helpful. So,
Lori, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Is it true? I think I heard this stat, and we all know that 87.5% of statistics are made up on the spot.
That's right.
Is it true that the only industry with fewer women in leadership is the trucking industry? It was like logistics and trucking. Has anybody else seen that stat?
I haven't heard that, but what I've heard is that sales is the worst department for gender parity, and it might be logistics that is worse than that in a company.
There we go.
That'd be my
I used to work
interpretation.
in logistics, and I would have to agree.
Thanks, Cynthia. Yeah. And so here's my last question. Is it getting better? Like, is it getting better, or are more people just listening, right? Are we getting better? Or are we getting worse? Or are we just now all looking at it?
It's starting to get better. It's people are speaking up. We're talking, we're yelling, we're showing examples of success. And that's what moves the needle for more women in sales, is showing success in increased ROI, showing success in better sales teams. And so many people are getting involved. So I'm going to say, yeah.
I love hearing that. Speaking of showing success, if anybody on this call hasn't read it already, check out Gong's blog. There are 2 great blogs there that talk about how women and men sell differently and how women are typically outperforming men. So if you don't have a lot of women on your team, yeah, we're missing out, right, Udi?
Absolutely.
All right, well, go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, I didn't want to steal your thunder.
No, I just want to say, like, it's something that's it's in all of our interests to solve for this. So let's get right to it. How do we attract more women to our organizations? And Udi, this is your first bullet up here. Check your website. Tell us about that.
Sure, absolutely. So when we built our latest website, this was almost 6 months ago, amongst other marketing and business goals, we wanted to make sure that it's attracting the right people that we want to hire as candidates and the right people that we want them to become our customers. And we took special care to make sure that we are going for gender parity. So I believe there are actually more women on our website than men right now. When we designed the career page, so like many companies, we shot a few employee profiles. We made sure there were more women than men that we were shooting for that part. We also looked at things like different age groups, different ethnic groups, that we wanted all of them to be represented on our website. And despite our best efforts, we didn't nail it. So we probably got about 1,000 responses to the website that we launched in June. I'm not exaggerating, because we did a sort of social campaign to launch the new branding. Literally many hundreds of responses came in, all of them overwhelmingly positive, except 3. So there were 3 comments that we received from women, not surprisingly, that they weren't crazy about the hero image of our website that showed a white male representing a VP of sales sitting on a couch, and there were other women and men standing behind him. And some women felt that that's, again, immortalizing the dominant male who's managing the show, and everyone else, the women and ethnic minorities, are dancing behind him. And that was, of course, exactly the opposite of what we were trying to do. But we owned that mistake. And we then went and spent several $1,000s and recommissioned that hero image to our design studio, and they did an amazing job. And if today you go to gong.io, you'll see our new hero image, which is a majority of women. There is no man standing in front. I think we totally did away with the power character, male or female, standing in front, and tried to portray really what we see our customers doing, which is running successful sales teams where everyone contributes equally and matters just as importantly. So that's just one example. I'll give a couple of really short ones before I finish this part. So another thing we did is we heard from candidates that they were looking at our management and board page, and alas, we do have a predominantly male management right now at the executive level, and like most board members, all of our board members are male. So we decided to just take them off the website. So I know this is not fixing the problem of hiring and promoting women, which we'll probably talk about later in today's webinar, but at least what we're trying to portray is, it is more important for us for the women to feel comfortable and that this is a company that we want them to work for than showcase all of our white bald heads on the website. So we just took a lot of those off and said, and of course, we edited the text to also make it clear that we are actively searching for women to come work for us.
That's fantastic. I will share that I made the very same mistake. When we were developing our curriculum brochures at Factor 8, I got a whole bunch of pictures of young white dudes who were, the typical millennial SDR. And a huge shout out to my graphic designer, Kaylee McConnell, who fixed that for me and represented diversity now on the front of all of them. I didn't know I was doing it. So thank you for that. So you talked a little bit about looking through job descriptions and web page. I'm going to kick over to Amira for a second because you did something amazing with your job descriptions. And I know that you won't do it, so I'm going to shout out your success story here. When you started in sales 2 years ago, I think you were the only woman, and now you have actually hit 50-50, right? At Criteria
We're
Corp?
actually, no, we are at like 30-70 right now. So, oh wait, hold on, let me take a look. Yeah, so we're 30-70 in sales. We're getting there. We're getting there. Our entire organization is 50-50 though, male and female.
Huge. But your candidate pool, you were saying that you're
Yes.
50%. How did you do that? Something with your job description and masculine traits?
Yeah, so I took a look at our job descriptions and I looked hard at it. I had done one review when I first started and then I took another pass at it. It was, I think, right before one of the meetings that we had with Lori. And I took another look and I'm like, I think it's still too masculine. So I rewrote the whole thing and I actually passed it to the females that were on my sales team to review it for me and say, I want you to highlight everything that gives you a visceral response, good or bad. And so then we talked about it and I actually removed all of those things that were bad and maybe used different words, maybe that weren't so masculine.
Amira, can you give us examples? Like what gave people visceral responses? What are some things we might all have in our job descriptions that are turning women off?
Hungry, hunter, aggressive.
Quota crusher.
Competitive.
Expert. And you know what we did is I took those words and I turned them around and I actually reprioritized some of like the requirements of my job as well. So, you know, I want somebody who can speak to my clients and has a ton of empathy. And so I really focused on that first and foremost. And then, you know, everything else will follow. And we really took a look at the requirements of our job description and removed as many as possible. We took a really hard look and said, what do we actually need for this job? And because, you know, we all know the women, and we've heard so many times that women, we need to check every single box. We need to make sure we can do every single thing. I need to be an expert. And so at the end of the day, we said, what do we actually need for this job? And we removed everything that wasn't actually a requirement.
I love that. So let me ask the panel this question. Why do women respond differently to, why are we turned off by need to crush it and those sort of war type words, those competitive, aggressive words? Because isn't sales a competitive sport?
I'll give my 2 cents. I don't think all women are turned off. I think a lot of women are. So there are women that does resonate for. And I like crushing my quota when I had one. And I if I wasn't in the top 20%, I was irritated. So I just think it's competitive in a different way, maybe. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of women are competitive, but to be thought that way, I just think it's the way we were raised. It's cultural.
We're not as interested in standing out in front and being the aggressor. We're more quiet about the self-promotion of being at the top. Does that sound right? Is that fair kind of what you're saying?
I'll add to that, Lauren, as well, is I think that we're a little more critical of ourselves and having that high expectation of being the number one person on the team. We put that pressure on ourselves and we think maybe that's something we can't accomplish. So we might not apply for that job or that promotion because we can't do it. And so I think it's a fear of not being able to meet those expectations that are set. And yes. I love crushing my quota too, Lori, so I'm all for it, and I'm competitive, but I don't want to set myself up for failure. I think that's what it comes down to.
I think that's what it really boils down to is, will somebody who is amazing and more than competent look at this job description and feel like there's a chance that she could fail? Because women won't put their hat in the ring unless we're sure we're going to nail like every item on the list. That was really good advice. Max, you own the walk bullet here. What does that mean? Oops, we've got you on mute. Here we go. While he fixes that, yeah. I'm gonna pop it to Cynthia. Cynthia, it seems like a no-brainer, but I don't know that we always do leverage diversity associations when we're trying to attract. How do you do that?
it's a concentrated and dedicated effort. I will throw a stat at you that I found through PricewaterhouseCoopers that says that 78% of the Fortune 500 CEOs have initiatives to increase the number of women in their companies.
Wow.
And if you take a look at what is normally the largest department within the company, it's usually the sales department. So increasing women in sales is normally the most expedient way to increase or to hit your overall number. Those same companies were polled and found that 63% of them leverage partnering with diversity associations like yours, like mine, to be able to tap into their target market. It just makes sense to go where your target market is.
Sure. Where are the women at the NAWSB? I love it. All right, Max, tell us about walking the walk, and I'm going to change over to our next slide.
Yeah, you can hear me now?
You got it.
Cool. So yeah, in terms of walking the walk, it's for us, it's doing things like this, being out there, being visible. When I started Sales Hacker and really started to ramp that, I sat there and thought about, if we're going to sit there and say we're the future of sales, we're the next generation of sales, what does that really mean? And for us, equality was a big piece of that, and that's why we always strive for, making sure there was a really balanced ratio on our stage, because we knew if it was on our stage, it would show up in our audience. For us at Outreach, we have women in leadership, we have women on the board. Our COO, Anna, she was interviewing for dozens of companies for a COO role when she was interviewing last year, and she said we were one of the only companies that had women on their board. So again, if you're looking to attract, you need to have women in leadership. You need to have women running sales teams. You need to have women on the board. We support Women's Sales Pros, National Association of Women's Sales Professionals, Girls Club. So a couple people on this call, Utah Women in Sales. Actually, probably everybody on this call we're supporters of. So we walk the walk as much as we possibly can. We want to be involved, and for us, it's as simple as something as like, this is the future. This is something that you need to support. And we have badass women in leadership roles. I mean, when Sale and Sarah Phillips and Sarah Imbach and Anna speak, everybody turns and listens. When Brooke B, who leads one of our sales development teams, speaks, you listen to Brooke. Brooke, we have another Brooke who leads one of our customer success teams. She's another badass woman in our organization, and not just related to the other women, but to everybody. They are kick-ass at what they do. So make sure we hire the cream of the crop in every role. But the more women we have across leadership roles, the easier it is to continue to attract others that want to work with them, work for them, work alongside them.
Max, thank you for that. I just want to add my 2 cents on how it goes such a long way. Women do their research and they vote with their employment and their dollars. And I will tell you personally that when I decided where to spend money for a sales conference this year, Outreach and Unleash, it was a no-brainer. And it was because I loved the culture of the company and what they stand for. And that's because of the women I see there, right? Along with many other things, but I thought that was fantastic. So
and the passion comes from the top down. I mean, like if Manny heard you say that right now, he might shed a tear. I'm pretty close. So, but like we are, that means a lot to us. Like that's huge for us. That's better than, I don't know, we love the LinkedIn top 50 awards and things like that, but those are the things that are like near and dear to our hearts. So
yeah, awesome. I love it. All right. So let's talk more about in the hiring process. So Udi and Cynthia, you both talked about diversity in this process, right? So Udi, why don't you give us a start, and Cynthia, you can add your 2 cents.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, one of the things that we do is we're looking for organizations where women go to look for equality friendly, if that's the term, employers. So I've looked and posted job openings at organizations like She Codes, which is for female engineers, which is pretty big, I think, globally, but this was specifically for our Israeli engineer team. I can tell you in my small marketing team, 4 of the people who report up to me, 3 of them are women, and they're doing an amazing job. So a huge shout out to Gabby and Noah and Nadia. I mean, like Max said, walk the walk. I think for every single role that we've hired, I've made it a point to look for female candidates, and I found some very good ones, as my team
reflects.
shows. Yeah, and I mean, we need to do better. We have a lot of amazing women in middle management. We have Samantha running our customer success team. We had an amazing woman running our SDR team. We have others running our finance. Is Hani, an amazing woman in Israel? And I think her entire team is females. Our entire finance team here at Gong, there are like 5 women doing an amazing job of the team.
Udi, you shared with me that something I really thought made sense, that as you're going out and trying to attract these women, right, you've leveraged organizations to attract them, but then you make sure that they get a chance to meet other team members who belong to those groups during the interview process.
Absolutely. I mean, part of our interview for most roles, part of the interview process is letting the candidate meet some of the team members, the future team members they'd be working with, go out for coffee or lunch. And I think it goes a long way if you have, if you're hiring for an SDR role and you have a woman candidate, send her to coffee or lunch with 1 or 2 of the women in the team. I'm sure she'll be a lot more comfortable asking questions that maybe she would not have asked men on the team, and just getting to know some of these women she'll be working with, I think will help her make the right decision. You got to start from somewhere, and the first woman on your team won't have that luxury, but from the second woman, there's no reason not to do that.
Brilliant. It's easy. We can do it immediately, and I love it. Cynthia, you do that, but you recommend it also for the hiring panel.
Yes, we actually have our work with organizations. We want to make sure that they have a diverse interview panel that's representative of the society, the customer, and the workforce that you want to have. So, for example, if the hiring manager is a man, he is more likely to hire a man. We want to know, well, why is this true? His built-in selection criteria are implicitly biased toward male-oriented strengths and approaches, and we want to challenge that. So the bias is pervasive. It's in the job description. It's in the interview questions, the selection criteria, and it's in the performance metrics and the selection criteria, because they're generally all created by men. And if that's the case, that ultimately leads to the promotion decisions as well. So in spite of their best intentions, men are still making biased decisions, and we want to get granular and specific in the weeds and overcome that.
I love that. I wouldn't have thought of that. And speaking of unconscious bias, Amira, talk to us about how you use assessments to overcome that.
So what assessments do, and a lot of different ATS or hiring software providers will actually have a process called blind hiring, where you can actually hide the information of your candidate, like their name, their email address, for example. So you actually, because your resume, immediately you're going to have some type of unconscious bias, whether it's from the school that they went to, did they have a college degree, or their name possibly. So if you can remove those things that are introducing unconscious bias into the process, the better off you are in terms of introducing a more diverse candidate pool from an HR perspective. And then what assessments oftentimes do is, if you use assessments up front, you're essentially looking for people that, can they do the job? Are they smart enough to understand the product that you might sell, for example? And you're literally looking at it just from a mental horsepower process and a personality process. And those personality assessments, actually, there's no adverse impact there. And so you can really take assessments to kind of introduce just some more objective data into your process, thereby reducing some of the unconscious bias.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if you initiated that, how it changes your candidate pool, right?
Well, it's hard for us to know, so I don't have any specific stats because we've been using them the entire time.
Right.
So, but I think that really contributes to the fact that our organization is truly 50-50 across the board.
I love that. And then number 4 is your point too, Amira, right? Leveraging referrals. You've had good luck with that?
Absolutely. Our referrals have been amazing. And one of the challenges that you might see with referrals, though, is if you tend to have, you need to actually watch your referral programs, because if you have a lot of, let's say you have this bro culture, people might be referring in those same types of people, right? You tend to refer people that look and feel just like you. And so that's one of the things that you really have to watch out for, is that as you start to build up more of a community of women in your organization, you will by default get more referrals that are female. And we've just had some, because we're 50-50, we get some amazing referrals, and that's really how we've been able to kind of build up more females and more diversity overall in our organization, LGBTQ, you name it, across the board.
I love that. And the fact that, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad thing to go to the Rockstar women on your team and say, we want more people like you. Would you be willing to refer folks?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
I love this. I know number 3, we're going to talk to Margaret about that, but Max, you were coming in with a point, right?
Yeah. So can you hear me? I'm gonna see
Yeah,
if I
you're on.
Okay. So actually, to pile on 2 things there. So Cynthia, on your point about, we actually have an interview loop that we do. So 5 people on an interview loop. We always make sure we have female employees on those loops for 2 reasons. If we're interviewing a woman, we want to make sure that they can speak to other women on the team. If we're interviewing a man, we want to make sure that the women on our team feel comfortable, working with this person. So we put everybody on that 5-person hiring loop. We make sure there are multiple women on that loop every time. And then in terms of referrals, we actually see that women typically refer more than men, more often, more frequently, and more people. They act as better champions for your company when they're truly happy. They will go out of their way to bring in others from their network more often than the men do.
I love that. Thank you. Margaret, talk to us about this being specific. I love this tip.
Yeah. So I think, one of the things that's really been interesting, and I've experienced this, is that a lot of times companies, they, and this isn't necessarily anything specific to women either. They'll talk about these initiatives that they have and these things that they're doing, and they speak of them in general terms. And anyone, when you're interviewing, is going to drill in, and they're going to want specifics. And so, I think this is one of the big things for women. This was one of the things we got back in our survey that was reinforced, is that when you're talking about efforts you're making to be more inclusive and promoting women in your organization, they're going to expect to hear specifics. So examples like what Amira and Max and Udi are giving, that they're going to want to hear those things, and they're going to sniff out BS very quickly. And the kind of the caveat that is, if you don't have them, then you own it. You acknowledge the problem and you address it and you call it for what it is, because trying to skirt around it or avoid it will always shoot you, because the people, they know and they can recognize that. And that's a big part of the feedback we get, is that, either own that you have a problem and you're looking to be better, or be very specific about what you're actually doing for the women in your organization.
We could have companies actually doing some wonderful things, but because they're not being specific and sharing that in that interview and onboarding process, they may be losing people. I love that tip. Thank you so much. All right. And I love the BS sniffing too. Let's come to our next slide. So how do we keep women here? A lot of companies don't think they have a problem because they're getting lots of women in the door. Hey, I've got, 20 female SDRs. But ladies and gentlemen, we're losing them. Right? We're losing them up the ladder. Women are kind of voting with their presence. So let's talk about some of our tips here. Lori, I'm going to go first to number 2 with you, and then we'll get Rebecca back on to talk about number 1. Yeah, you talked about learning about the goals.
Yeah, it's one thing for diversity to hire women into your company, but it's another thing for them to really feel like they're part of the organization, part of the plan. A lot of women want professional development. And so to know what the professional development goals are and to help make a plan, figure out, if I'm the new employee, what do I want to become eventually? What's my goal? What are some options for me? And to be helped and guided toward the best person I can be at that company. It will retain more women, because you're right, Lauren, women are looking around and they're saying, you know what, there's no women in leadership, so I might as well be looking for something else myself. And so they leave and they go to another company. They don't go home like people think. They're not just staying at home. They're going to a competitor.
You bet they are. In fact, I'm going to skip around again. Sorry, I know I do this a lot, but Margaret, it reminds me of this great survey that we did. We talked about women and how they see opportunities, right? Are the opportunities in my organization plentiful? And tell us about that. Did the majority of women think yes or not?
It was really interesting because what we wanted to look at was past and present. And what was kind of a scary thing to look at is the good news was in current companies, improvements had been made and they felt that things were getting better. What was scary is that over half of them were in new companies. And when they talked about the past, it was, they were saying that
Because they
this new
left.
company was better. And so they left. They, when they didn't feel that they were seeing the traction at the current company, they were leaving. And for whatever reason, like, and going through a lot of the commentary, it was kind of what I talked about with the bro culture and that, like not feeling like they could have a voice or the fear of repercussions, for speaking up. And so I think the idea of trying to create a safe space where women can have a voice it becomes really important, because otherwise what we're seeing is that they'll leave. They'll go somewhere else where they perceive there to be opportunity for them to grow, and there's support. There's an understanding of what it is to be a woman in sales.
Mm-hmm. Let's have you speak to bullet 4 while we've got you here, because I thought this was fantastic. Being clear and purposeful about selection criteria. What's that mean?
Yeah, so I mean, I think this goes back to like when you think about what Amira was saying with referrals, it's kind of dangerous too when you think about who goes and speaks. And so the thing that takes more time is actually putting in a formal process of how somebody is selected, and having some sort of, application, and not just, hey, I think this person would be really great to go with. And I think that's the tough part, is the easy default is to send somebody because you think they would do a great job, they're performing, you want to give them an attaboy or attagirl. And whether it's male or female, what ends up happening is people on the team look at that and, they're frustrated because they weren't given the opportunity to even raise their hand. They didn't even know that that was something that they could do. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard because it requires intentionality. It requires planning. It requires a process. And especially for, coming from startups, like you need to move fast. And it's one of those things that it may seem small at the time and insignificant to not put something in place, but it speaks significant, it's those, sorry, Lori, I can't remember what you called it, but it's like those microaggressions. It's one of those microaggressions. I'm sure there was a term you used.
So I'm going to learn out loud here for a second. I think this is what you're talking about. Right now, I'm looking at all the conferences that the Factor 8 team is going to go to next year and who I'm going to take where, right? Some people are going to be asked to speak. Some people are going to be asked to, man the booth and, network, etc. And I'm looking at each one thinking, who's the right person to take with me? And what you're saying, the advice here is I need to publicize that to the team and say, here's how I'm going to be selecting people. If you're interested in going, let me know. And here's how I'll make those selections. Because otherwise, the assumption from everybody else on the team may be, oh, well, I wasn't picked because I was a woman, or she just always picks her favorites. Yep, and that could be speaking at conferences. It could be being on interview panels. It could be like that old favoritism and quote unquote good old boys club. That's exactly what you're addressing here.
Yep.
I have learned something that's big.
Sorry to interrupt. There's this concept called equity theory, whereby if the person believes that the selection process was fair, even if they weren't selected, they will be okay with the outcome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that is, it's the perception that the process was fair, and by documenting the process or communicating it, then at least you understand what it was. And I'm okay that Margaret got selected and maybe not me because I knew what the process was.
Yeah, we almost, as male sales leaders, we have to ask you to overcorrect a little bit because the men are at the top making the selections, and that's just straight up statistic fact, right? By the percentage of men versus women in sales leadership. And so because I don't look like you and I wasn't selected, I may assume that that's the reason. That's interesting. I like
Lauren?
that a lot. Okay. Yeah, Lori, go ahead.
And that goes toward what a male executive leader thinks about executive presence. A lot of times they will think that a woman on the team doesn't have it, and so you have to say, well, what does executive presence look like? And those are the things that we have to talk about more and help redefine.
I love that. All right. So there are also some traditional bullet points here. Amira and Rebecca, you talked about some flexibility, right? Whether it's work from home for men and women or generous family leave for men and women. Rebecca, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, great. So yeah, I talked a little bit about flexibility, and that was the feedback I kept getting again and again. And I was asking my women, and I had a little insight through surveying them as well. And that's flexibility with position, location, and time of the job. Women tend to have multiple things going on at once, and their talent is the flexibility to be able to balance those things. And that's why they're so valuable, is they make the time and they figure out how to do it. But we got to give them that flexibility to be able to do with all the other things they're balancing. And yes, I talked about maternity leave as well, but I'll let her take a little more detail into that. But having generous family leave, it's such an important time in your life, and it means a lot. And you have to feel that you can leave things at home and go to work. And so having that is, I've seen it happen. A lot of great companies. I was at Adobe before this. You guys probably know their policy. 6 months plus a welcome back program, and that is just so helpful. And you feel like it's a reason to stay. It's a reason to come back, and it's a reason to stay. And I touched on flexibility for the men and the women. And the reason I think this is so important is because if you just give flexibility to the woman, it means that they're in charge of everything at home too.
Right.
So I'm going to go to work, do my job, and I'm in charge of everything at home as well. And that's really not okay. We need to make sure that if the woman has to stay late at work, or the partner, whatever relationship status, they are able to have a man who can go home and get the kids, or pick up some of those extra responsibilities at home. So that's kind of my thoughts there.
I love it. I love it. Amira, do you want to add your 2 cents before we move on to the next slide?
Sure. As it relates to generous family leave, again, really important for both men and women. Like, that bonding time is incredibly important on both fronts. And we don't do this, but I've also seen it where some companies will do like egg freezing, for example. They'll help with fertility, which is really, as a woman in leadership, right? Like, sometimes you got to put things on ice, like literally. And so, right? I mean, that can be part of it. I've also seen some companies where they will pay for the first 6 months to a year after a woman has a baby for their nanny and or a companion to fly with them along with their child. So for that first year, they actually get somebody to go with them if they do need to travel, because as you raise up the ranks, the requirements for you to travel and go other places becomes a burden, especially when you have young children at home. So those are some ideas more at a corporate level that companies could implement.
That's fantastic. Very interesting. Thank you. All right. So we're going to come to this next slide. It's similar, right? We're talking about retention, but this is engaging. Like, right? Engagement goes beyond retention. I want to pull Margaret back on here because she's got the first one. Funky socks do not appeal to all. What on earth does that mean?
Oh my gosh. Well, if anybody was going to trade shows like circa 2015, you probably saw a lot of sock swag. And so it was just kind of being cheeky in that it's very clearly a swag item or a perk item at companies that's targeted at a male audience. It's like as men explained to me, it's like their one way to show their personalities through their socks. We have lots of other ways as women. So, but it's this idea of it sends a very strong message when incentives like this. That's a really simple example, but incentives are used that are very clearly oriented more towards a male audience and aren't necessarily as exciting for women. And so the challenge becomes, like you again feel kind of like an outsider, and it's not really something you want to go for. And so being conscious of that, and I think Udi mentioned it earlier when he was talking about the website, and Amira mentioned it when she solicited feedback from people in the company. And I think that's something that's really, really big, is that women want to be able to have input, and they don't necessarily have to be in management or leadership roles to be able to add valuable insight. And this is a perfect example of like very specific sales incentives, where going to top female producers and asking them, what would get you excited? What would be a neat incentive for you? What is something that would be worth going up, above and beyond what you're already doing?
I love that. I have to tell you that when I was in sales and sales leadership, I earned trips to Hawaii and Tahiti. And, I had about 3 months of stress of being in front of the rest of the sales organization in a swimsuit. Like, that's just not cool for women. Can I be straight up honest with you? I don't know that I would have said no. I don't want you to go all expense paid to Tahiti, but I would have not minded a few options around that. So, all right. Thank you for that. That's really good. So, Amira, you were talking about charity events. That's big for women.
Yeah, it's big. And you know what? I would say this is probably on the millennial front as well. So I think
Bingo.
this kind of crosses, regardless. I mean, even for me, right? Like, but you want this higher purpose. You don't, it's not like I would love to say that in sales, yeah, I love my paycheck, I love my commission check. But at the end of the day, it's something so much more important. Like, there's something so much bigger. It's about giving back. It's about seeing the people that I mentor get promoted, and charity events and employee like those are some of the things where I'm doing something bigger than myself and bigger than the paycheck, and it actually makes everybody feel more inclusive. It ties everybody in together for this greater good, and I think it's so important from a morale perspective, and not just for men but for or women but for men as well. So this is something that's really brought our organization together.
Yeah, I like that. All right, Lori, this is your quote on number 3. Inclusion is different than diversity. We have to access the employees across the entire life cycle. Will you speak to that? And then I'm going to toss it to you, Cynthia, because you said something amazing too. Don't just engage, integrate. So I bet you two can play off each other a bit here. What does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just start by saying the research that Joelle Laban and I are doing about this is showing that women want to be acclimated into the organization from the very beginning and not kind of on a separate track or sitting aside watching, everybody. For me, it was always cigar bars that I was invited to. And, I've had a good cigar every now and then, but it's not my first thing that I would do. But from the very beginning, to feel like you're part of the team and part of the company, and not to be cast aside or just watching and kind of watching from the side. And
so don't assume that she doesn't want to go to the cigar bar. Invite her along and maybe move it away from the cigar bar every once in a while.
Yeah, maybe have an option.
Interesting. Cynthia, what did you mean about that? Don't just engage, integrate.
So a lot of times when we say engage, we're focused on the wrong thing. So when a corporation says hire more women, those 78% of the companies that I referred to in the beginning, if you have an initiative that just says hire more women without an integration process, women can't and won't succeed in that type of environment. For example, we worked with a company here in Metro Detroit. It was an automotive company who saw one of their competitors get dinged for not having enough women in sales leadership. So what they did was they conducted this nationwide search for women sales professionals, women sales leaders. They put them in place, but what happened was their peers, their subordinates, knew that they were just there to check a box. So there was a huge amount of resentment, animosity, and as a result, the women who came from this nationwide search actually left. 100% of them left, went to either the suppliers of those automotive companies or went back to their home state. So when we talk about integration, we need to remember that we need to be focused on helping women in an environment where they thrive instead of just engagement.
Getting more in the front door. I love it. So I'm going to speed us up. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to speed us up so we've got some time for questions. But Max, this one's really important. Will you speak to number 4 while I switch the slide? Partnering often.
Yeah, so partnering often. So what we actually have for everyone on our team and is making sure that we have a plan for promotion. So promotion pathing is templated and built out for everyone, and that there are times built in for like a safe space, time to share your feedback with us as leadership, and what we're doing right, what your concerns are, what we could do better. And I think I'm a big believer in feedback as a gift. I think it's one of those things as a leader, you really need to learn how to take feedback and not take it personally, but make sure you're doing the right things to act on that feedback. There are things that are happening across the team that you're doing a good job at escalating it to external circumstances to HR or other leaders who are maybe moving past you in your organization to tap people that are more junior to you and for projects or things that they shouldn't be doing, and just saying, hey, maybe you should go through me on this, or let's talk about some of the feedback that I received from some people on my team, and giving them that time to share that feedback and making sure that they're not going to be resented for it or retaliated on it, because I think that's very important. We do regular one-on-ones with all of our directors. Our directors do weekly one-on-ones with all the people that they manage. So I think it's really important to have that time and make sure that I know it's like really robotic, but sometimes it needs to be systematized, or there needs to be a template around, promo pathing, so everybody knows exactly what they need to do and by when and what they're going to get out of that, or even a template about how, or a process around how we're going to share feedback. We're going to make sure that if it needs to be, it's anonymous. We're going to make sure that, all these other boxes are checked so that you really do feel like it's a safe space when you do share that feedback, and you're not going to be, again, resented or retaliated against.
I love that. And we see it here on the promotion slide as well. Clear promotion paths are critical to women, right? Because we're not going to just randomly go up and ask people how we get ahead. That's not how women work. We want to see the plan in place and that it's official. So I just think that's fantastic. Rebecca, I'm going to go backwards on here. Talk to us about mentorship.
Yeah, great. And I think Max talked a little bit about this as well. But I want to talk to the mentee for a minute first. If you are, women are so busy, so take the time to go to those networking events where you can meet someone to be a mentor. Because it's hard to meet someone and, get on LinkedIn, look at that, and take the time to really seek out someone. I'm a salesperson by nature, so I found my mentee by really pressuring her into it. But they're busy people. You have to go put yourself out there, be willing to work with their schedule, like put the time in to find a really great mentor. And then from the mentor side, be a good example and remember back to when you were in that same position and take the time to support and, help those people that need the extra coaching when they're just first starting out. And something super important for me is having men and women mentors, because the men a lot of times are who's going to take you to the top with them. So don't just rely on a woman mentor, have a male mentor as well. And a lot of times that's who it will be, because those are the people who are going to help you get to the top. And, that's my biggest advice, I say, is just have the both sides of it.
Yep. In fact, as we switch slides, Margaret, I want you to talk to that for a second, because I know that mentorship has been pretty much everyone's favorite thing in Girls Club. And then you also have the point about one-on-one encouragement. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, and I want to hit on one thing really quick, because Cynthia actually wrote an article that was published in Sales Hacker a couple weeks ago, and this is one of the things she talked about, is like women supporting other women. And remember, like, just because you were put through something doesn't mean that you should subject someone else to have to go through what you went through. And I thought that just really resonated, and I really appreciate that. So I just wanted to hit on that really quick when Rebecca was talking about mentors. Thanks. I thought that was really neat. Yeah, so as far as one-to-one, this is something the mentor program is huge for Girls Club. And what women are really wanting too is, like, they're wanting somebody to tap them on the shoulder and acknowledge what they're great at. And so, what's been really interesting is I think most of the women I talked to who got into sales, it's either somebody told them they'd be great at it, or they had a parent in there. And so there was kind of that belief of like, well, I saw my mom do it and I bet I could too.
A role model.
There's something really powerful about that. And, I would add on, in the spirit of action that's going to help them, at some point, these women need to be able to do that without you as their manager doing it for them. And so really coaching them around, you're doing this now, and then things that they can and should be doing, so that in the future, when you're not with them as a manager, that to ensure that they're still able to, get that encouragement, get the feedback that they need, and progress in their careers. But yes, that just recognizing that you see them doing something great, or you see something great in them, will go a very long way.
You'd be shocked how far it goes, right? We had thousands of people interested in Girls Club, and it wasn't until somebody reached out to them specifically and said, this is for you. And then it took that tiny nudge, and then they just took off like a rocket. All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to do our lightning round. These are all submitted by our panelists. Fast tips for managers. Creating a chat group. That was in Max's organization. A great leader who had a couple female SDRs on his team and just created a safe chat that said, you have any issues, you have any concerns, this is just for us. It's private. You're safe here. Don't overcorrect, right? You don't hire a woman just to get a woman in the job. 100-hour work weeks shouldn't make the list, all right? So balance is important to all of us. And when we reward the guy who stays late every single night just because he stays late every single night, or we quit talking to the woman who has to go home on time about promotions because she's not the last one in the office, we're really not being great role models here. Women love it when we connect first. just like we teach our sales people to create rapport, right? Like, why not start a meeting by showing that you give a damn about who she is and what's going on in her life? Calling out bad behavior quickly. Men, this is a great tip for you. You're in a sales meeting, it's a pipeline meeting. Somebody says something that could be construed as maybe a little vulgar, something that may be inappropriate. It's okay to very swiftly call that out. And the fact that you are doing that in front of the rest of the women there shows that you care. And I'm not saying embarrass in public. I'm just saying, hey, dude, that's not called for. Goes a long way. Asking about career goals, we've already talked about a little bit. Making sure that you encourage and ask. Leaders, Margaret, you talked to this earlier. Women sees through the gimmicks. Sorry, right? Don't, walk the walk, like Max says. Lori, I loved your suggestion of keeping a success journal. Ladies, we're not always great at self-promotion. So keep a folder of all the ways that you're a badass so that you're ready when you go in for that interview. Creating a community is really important. We've seen Girls Club thrive because it's a community of women, but you can do that in your own organization. And my very favorite one here is sharing failures too, right? Like, it's okay. Don't just share success stories. As a leader, share how you failed every once in a while and watch the women love you more for it and learn that it's okay to take some risks. I am very eager to have questions submitted by email. We'll get them answered by our panel and sent back to you. But I just want to give them the last minute of recognition. Lori at Women's Sales Pro is going to start to do corporate training for companies who need to solve this. So you can reach out to her at her email address there. If you're in Utah and in sales, you got to get in touch with Rebecca. They do local events. Amira put her personal email address here so that you can reach out to her with any questions about the success that they've had on this journey, because they put a lot of action behind this recently, and she can always talk to you about assessments as well. Margaret and Girls Club is announcing that we are going to do a generation 2 of this community. So you can go to wearegirlsclub.com and nominate someone to come in as a protege or a mentor. Cynthia, you, I think, have the very largest group of female sales professionals in the world, and everybody's invited to join at nawsp.org. Max, you've heard us all rave about Unleash, and he invites everybody to check out Unleash, but also Outreach has a new sales engagement podcast, and the website is there too. Yeah, I was thrilled to be interviewed on that recently, and it was a wonderful experience. Really good stuff there. And Gong, thank you so much, as one of our supporters of Girls Club, does have a special offer out there for everybody at Girls Club. You can go to gong.io/Girls Club. Wow, we brought it in on time. I'm sorry I had to speak for you a couple times. You guys are incredible. Lots of great tips. I thank you so much.
Big round of applause for Lauren for putting this together. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you. I encourage you to share the tips, share the webinar. We are going to put a blog post about this and a copy of the recording. Email me personally with your questions, lb@factor8.com. Happy holidays, panel. Thank you for presenting for what women want at work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.